And we are live. All right, so welcome to Youth Flag discussion. This podcast focuses on non-contact rugby union, mixed gender rugby. Um, Although some of us sit on different boards or are coaches or participants in different teams, we do not speak for anybody. We do not speak for USA Rugby. We do not speak for Myro. We're just a bunch of folks sitting around discussing topics that are pertinent and interesting to youth rugby. Basically, as though we were sitting around, hanging around at the pub. So my name is Daniel, and going from the top of the Discord order, Alan, do you guys want to introduce yourselves, all the co-hosts?
Hi, yeah. So I'm Alan. I'm a coach with the Rentham Barbarians.
Hi, my name's Chris, and I am representing the rugby dad in this group. I'm done with my days of playing and coaching and reffing, and now I just got some rugby loving kids, and we love to talk rugby. Move into Navesh.
So Daryl.
Oh, is it me? Oh, hey, Daryl Jackson. I'm sorry, I didn't see that list. I didn't see the list. Daryl Jackson. I'm formerly the rugby development officer for New England. I grew up in Colorado, um, and where I played my adult rugby. And but now I'm a permanent youth coach. I've done college, I've done adult club, but my passion is youth rugby.
So we got Sean next, and Shaggy. Sean, are you with us? Shaggy, you with us?
Hey, how's it going? It's Shaggy from I'm the president of the South Shore Sharks Youth Rugby Club. I help out with Myro. I'm the clerk with Myro, and I love youth rugby.
This is
Sorry,
Steve
guys.
Cygnus with the Rentham Barbarians, serve as club president and one of the coaches of the club.
Fantastic. And folks, we have a guest for today. We've got Kyle with us. Now, Kyle, help me out. Is it Kyle Ciquera?
Yeah, Kyle Ciquera.
Ciquera. Okay, thank you very much. Now, the reason that we're very interested in Kyle is, Kyle, you actually began rugby locally as a youth, made your way through rugby, and you can find Kyle playing. Is it now for the Mystics? And last season, you also played for the Free Jacks.
Yeah, I played with the Free Jacks last MLR season, and I also played in the inaugural season with them as well.
Fantastic. So we're very, very lucky to have you. So we're going to jump into news, and then we're going to jump into a topic where we're going to be grilling Kyle for a lot of information. So let's go ahead and transition over to news. Folks, do we have anything interesting happen in Massachusetts today?
We do. From the governor's desk, the Governor Charlie Baker has issued, or today he announced that he's extending the closure of all schools in Massachusetts, K through 12, and non-emergency childcare programs through the end of the school year. So that basically means that there will be no in building school, which essentially shuts down the MIAA spring season. So there will be no high school varsity rugby this year. Very sad, very disappointing. Um, so yeah, so there's that. No news from USA Rugby. They haven't really announced anything. They're still going through their bankruptcy. So no news. And it doesn't mean they're not doing anything. I think they're all working really hard behind the scenes. But they're keeping whatever they know very close to the vest. Which means Myro is following suit as well. They're not really seeing anything, not speculating anything. But what we do know is that if you did register, whatever you registered for is good until the end of the season. Actually, it's good until August. That's if we are able to get any kind of playing done. But it looks like, all right, so we're officially. Best bets is trying to work towards early summer, but more realistically, it might have to be all the way into the fall.
All right, that's pretty heavy. Anything else from anybody?
Well, I did want to comment on that fall. That actually does change the trajectory. Some of our conversations, maybe next week or another one. We haven't talked about what happens. We talked a lot about what happens if we get the go ahead to play rugby now sooner rather than later. But now we got to start talking about what we might do in the fall. But that is a topic for another day. I did want to bring attention something that's near and dear to my heart is one of the players that's been playing youth rugby in Massachusetts just announced that they signed on with Lindenwood University. For those of you who know, Lindenwood's probably the top university in the country at rugby, and we've got a guy who played for the Wolfhounds and he played for BC High, and he just signed on to play with Lindenwood. And I really like to bring attention to somebody from the Northeast who's doing it. How fitting is it that we have Kyle on here today? But we've got another one behind Kyle. It was tweeted by the Free Jacks. I saw it, and I saw it tweeted by Lindenwood as well. That we've got a kid coming from the Northeast going to one of probably the premier school of rugby, and I'm really happy for him, and I'm really happy for Northeast rugby.
That is
Nice.
fantastic. That is so cool. Daryl, I'll cut you off.
No, that's cool. No, that's awesome.
Awesome.
I love good news.
That's awesome. We got some little background noise, so I've made a couple of mutes. I will unmute in a minute just to make sure that there's not a lot of background noise. All right. Any other news, guys? Anything else that
Not much from Myro. We're waiting on a couple of meetings starting this and next week before we can start get the ball rolling. So we'll see what happens there, but nothing yet. No news in that front.
Usually, no news is good news. But
Yeah.
I don't think that's the case necessarily.
Well, it's waiting for everything else. As USA Rugby
Correct.
goes and MIAA goes, those are the Myro follows suit,
Yeah.
and then it's just a matter of we're trying to create other avenues within Myro. So I'm hoping for some good news for the community soon. As we enter into all this, these crazy times, we have to adapt. Everyone has to adapt, right? Yeah, just we are organizations, we know all of our governed bodies. Everyone needs to be ready to make the best time of the time we have. You know what I mean? So
Yep.
that's what we're going for.
Makes a lot of sense. All right. If there's no more news, I think we're going to go ahead and move to the main topic. Are we good, everybody? Fantastic.
I did have one more quick thing. There was an article, and I think Dan, you might have said it to me. It was about the state of youth sports in the United States.
Yeah.
It's a really good article. Really shines a light on this anomaly. Parents really wanting their kids to have a great athletic sporting experience, and how much money they're willing to spend on it, how much time and money they're willing to spend on it, and how this event, this COVID-19 virus, could have some lasting effects going into the fall or maybe next spring. Being that it just kind of spotlights how things like people wearing a mask, social distancing, and that might start translating into sport with lots of other sports as well. For example, Myro was going to partner with Nike Sports Camp and do a camp for this summer. Part of the attraction was having a sleepaway camp. It was going to be for about 3 or 4 days, and the aim was going to be elementary through high school, and it's going to be hosted at Curry College. But going through COVID-19, we were kind of talking. I was talking with the guy last weekend. Even if we were on the downhill slope and we were able to run this camp, what this camp would actually look like in a post-COVID-19 world. The idea of maybe a sleepaway camp is not such a great idea anymore. The kids were going to stay the night in the dormitories. If I'm a parent, I don't know if I'm okay with having my kid play contact sport. Even if I'm okay with that, am I going to be okay with him staying at a sleepaway camp for a week? Am I going to feel comfortable with my kid playing a contact sport now that there is no social distancing? You got to get right in there. We don't have testing. It's wide and expanding. So it was a really interesting article. They focused mostly on soccer and lacrosse and
Yep.
bigger sports, bigger youth sports. But you know, post COVID-19, I mean, we may have to. Right now, we're just trying to figure out when we can play, but there could be some bigger things that we have to think about going forward.
This will come to an end. I mean, I think this is probably the one walkaway is that we have an amazing world full of incredible scientists who are working hard to come up with a cure. And as terrible as COVID-19 or the coronavirus is, it is a coronavirus, and we have beaten them before. We will. This will come to an end. The world will come back to normality. We just need to be smart before we get there, that we don't create ourselves too much of a problem, and we should learn from Spanish flu back in 1918 through 1920, and we are doing, which is why things are stabilizing now, but we've got a long way to go.
What was it like back in the Spanish flu, Alan?
I was a little old, so it was a little hard for me to recall it in detail.
He's old, but he's not that old.
Yeah. And I was in Britain rather than Spain, so we didn't really see it quite the same way.
So it didn't affect him, right?
It was just like this, but the SUVs were smaller.
There you go. And they drove on the other side of the road.
Hey Daryl, if you could send me the URL for that, put it in show notes.
Article?
I can show it on screen, or I can make sure that it makes it into the show notes.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, just
Anything else in news, guys, or should we go on to the main topic?
Oh, I
Going
guess
once.
it's time.
All right, so let's go ahead and move to the main topic, and for that we brought Kyle on. Kyle, the main topic is basically staying with rugby, but for the most part, we really just want to hear your story. Where did you play? How did you first learn about rugby? What kept you in rugby? And so just go ahead. Let us know where did you start?
Yeah, so I started playing my freshman year of high school at Bishop Hendricken. Didn't really know much about rugby up until then. But yeah, a lot of I used to play hockey and football, so a lot of hockey and football players did it in the off season. So I was like, hey, I'll give it a try. And then by the end of my sophomore year, I really enjoyed it a lot. The guys around the team were awesome. It was a great environment, I guess. And then I decided to go play Myro my sophomore year. Played with the Wolfhounds all through high school. We did a tour at Hendricken of England and Wales my junior year. Yeah, and then I went to go on to play college at St. Bonaventure. Played in the Rugby East and the D1A, and then last year got picked up by the Free Jacks.
So you
Good deal.
started Hendricken, right? And you said you went to Myro at that point. You went to the Irish Wolfhounds. What are you able to share us what made you decide to go Irish Wolfhounds and not stay with Hendricken?
Well, yeah. So Hendricken only plays in the spring, since it's only affiliated with the school. So for high school. Yeah, so the only thing around us for the summer would then go play for a team in Boston. And Greg Boos was my Myro coach, so I just connected with him. And that's how I got involved.
Yeah, good deal. That's the way that it is still today for a lot of kids in the summertime. And Greg's still coaching.
Yeah, he's an awesome coach. I actually owe him a lot. He's teaching a lot of the basic fundamentals for me.
Yeah.
So at that time, it was only high school rugby was only club, right?
Yeah, yeah. So Hendricken was actually allowed to play in Myro. We played in the top division. We played like BC High, St. John's Prep, all the teams in the top division now. But yeah, and yeah, we're obviously allowed to join Myro at that point as well too.
That's interesting. So you played for your school, Hendricken, in the spring as a club sport. Now I played for Brookline High School, and it was a club sport there also. Played under Ian Ryrie, who's also a Boston Men. So you played in the spring, but you wanted to be able to play more seasons, or you played in the spring for Hendricken and then the other seasons with Wolfhounds? Did you move completely to Irish Wolfhounds and just stick with Irish Wolfhounds? Were you in your high school for some of the year and then the Hounds for the rest of the year?
Yeah, so we just played 15s for Hendricken, played in the high school tournament or whatever.
Yep.
Played all the teams or whatever. And then in the summer, since we weren't doing anything, and if you wanted to continue to play, you could play sevens for a high school club.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the same way. That's pretty much the same way it works now, with the exception of that MIAA is most of the schools now, and Hendricken's been moved into a different league. But that's the way that it works, even for a lot of players here today. It works out really well. It's a good way for kids to network and get to know each other in the summertime on different teams. So when maybe your teammates in the summer, when your opponents in the spring, and it seems it seems to be really fun for the kids in the summertime.
Oh, I get it. I get it. So you were basically playing freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior with Hendricken, but Hendricken only provided spring, and then
And 15s.
in 15s exactly. And then when the spring was done with Hendricken for freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior, in freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior, you'd go over to the Wolfhounds. So you were like you were a two club, your school club and the Wolfhounds type of player. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah, good deal. Hey,
Got it. Got it. Got it.
and so Kyle, when you switched over to rugby in ninth grade, coming from the youth, the youth middle school and under, what position did you play in rugby? And then I'm going to follow up with, what position did you play in hockey, and likewise for football?
Yeah, so my freshman year, I was not really a big guy. Um, Probably a forward, but I didn't really know a lot of the rules. Just was out there because I enjoyed the contact most part. And it was the first time I got to run the ball, so it was
Yes.
big plus.
Yes.
Big
Um,
plus, yeah.
and
But
then my sophomore year of high school, I actually played inside center.
Whoa.
Before I
Perfect.
got moved, yeah, yeah. And then junior and senior year, I played hooker and prop.
Good deal. Does Josh Smith know that you can play inside center? Did you ask him to get you in there?
I've never. That's one of my deep secrets. I never told anybody about that one.
That's phenomenal.
It's in the public domain now, though. I think the whole
Yeah,
world is.
Yeah.
Everybody's listening.
I'm trying to
so
work out what
Yeah.
the training regime is that takes you from inside center to prop. Yeah,
mm,
is that
Oh,
where you get the pot roast handle? Because you got to put on a
yeah,
few extra pounds to put across.
a few extra pounds here and there.
now
Yeah,
now
football.
did you ever play under the MIAA or varsity, or were you club the whole time?
Yeah. So we were clubbed the whole time.
Okay.
At Hendricken, it was kind of an uphill battle a lot of times. Just like the school wasn't behind us 100%. There were some injuries that happened a couple years ago that were pretty serious. That the school was like, "Oh my God, this is crazy. Like, why are we letting these kids play?" Um, and then like kids were getting in trouble and stuff when they go on tours. So like everything that we had to do with the school was just fighting tooth and nail. But right now, I know right now at Hendricken they play in the Connecticut League because it's not organized high school sport there. So they've been traveling around Connecticut playing clubs.
That's right. So Hendricken, they're in Connecticut, right?
No, they're in
No,
Rhode
Rhode
Island.
Island.
They're in Rhode Island. Okay.
Yeah.
So they're not part of the MIAA. So okay.
Nope.
So
Hearing that
okay.
they have to go all the way to Connecticut to get a game, like, oh, that just hurts me.
So they actually have started put in some progress. I think they've started their own Rhode Island rugby organization.
Yeah.
Yes.
Um,
Youth an SRO,
yeah.
state rugby
Um,
organization. Yeah.
yeah. And now they just honestly, I think they just need someone to go from school to high school to high school, trying to get uh these like sports going. I guess I just don't know if they have like the personnel to do it, like the amount of people that they would need to start that. But I know they're trying right now real hard.
That's the tricky thing. You need people in place,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
up here it was just I still don't know how they made that transition, but just getting in transition to the high school, the MIAA was just awesome up here. It really grew the numbers in the high school game up here, and it really solidified it because the club sport is club sport, and that comes with all, it comes with excitement. On two ends, it's exciting because anything you're not really confined by all the MIAA rules, but then again, you don't have all the benefits either. But yeah, in a way, we've been discussing just that. How does that happen? That really should be all of our our youth leaders approach. We should really start to understand how to communicate that to other states, how to push the envelope from what we've done here in Massachusetts to Rhode Island, to the neighboring New England states, because that would be the best thing, really best thing for the area.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think I mean, I just then we need guys that like alumni from Hendricken that are still in the area to come out and like put their hand up and say, "Hey, like I want to go help coach rugby somewhere." I mean, it doesn't have to be. It just has to be a couple hours a day. You don't have to commit a whole ton right now, but just something, I guess. Um, and I think that's where they're getting stalled at right now. So
Well,
Yeah, and I feel like a total I don't know, heel. I don't know what I feel like. I'm in Rhode Island, so I coached Providence men, Providence women. I went to Brookline High School. I'm coaching right now with Steve in and Alan in the Barbarians, and that's been amazing. Coaching youth has been just so much fun. And my children are in the club, so I get to coach my kid. My second one is just joined my group, so I'm living the dream. As much as I was having fun playing D1, as much as I was having fun coaching, um, I think I'm having the most fun right now. Now there was really nothing in Rhode Island for youth. I found out about the Barbarians through some friends that went up there and had their kids up there. So I'm in a bizarre situation where you're right. I think Jeff Jeff Guess, I can't remember his name. I'll look it up. Um, he is starting the SRO here in Rhode Island, and I have a hard time. Well, I just love the Barbarians. I'm having a really great time there. I'm not going to disassociate myself from the Barbarians, and also a lot of high schools when they have their practices, it's like at 3 o'clock or from 4 to 5, or something like that. I can't get there for that time, so it's
Yeah.
very difficult to be able to make myself available to help something in Rhode Island, a club in Rhode Island. Kyle, as you mentioned earlier, it's almost like the high schools. When you were a club, when you were with Hendricken, and now it's with Brookline. It's almost like the high school. I got to be careful how I say this, but it always seemed like almost everything was stacked against it. We've had other episodes where we talked about how hard it is to get a field, and so it seems like all the resources were being used up, and there was none left over for rugby. Rugby always seemed like it was an afterthought or just about to fall apart, and it just needed, as Shaggy said, just needed somebody to help get it going. And I'd love to be able to help with Hendricken, or I've heard that there's a couple of high schools, Warwick, Pilgrim in Warwick, I think started
Correct.
a high school club. I don't know how they're doing. I think um, there's also another school right near where I live actually that started a club. I don't know how that's doing, but it's just tough. It requires a lot of time, as you said, Kyle. I mean, Kyle, do you have time, to go help start a youth program somewhere?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. People don't, right? It's just you can't.
yeah, I know. You're right. You're right. You're totally right. Like you need someone that would have to commit it would be their job pretty much essentially. And I know like no one wants to do anything for free for that matter. Um, but yeah, I would assume like there would have to be a person that would be their one job is to get kids involved and started at high schools. That would be the basis of it.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, let me
and
just
those problems that you talked about for high school club or going high school varsity still exist today. I mean, it's school gets out at 2:30, 3 o'clock, and practice, and then ideally the kids want to have practice like right after school. And most people, if you're working a professional job, yeah, you just don't get off work in time, which is why it's always been kind of nice with club at least that you could set your practice time anytime you wanted to. If you were the coach, you could say, hey, well, I get up work at 5, I can start practice at 5:30 or 6. Um, and it's going to have to be at a park that's somewhat convenient to either where I work or where I live. Whereas if it's high school rugby, well, it's got to be at the school. Um, and that's where I'm a little biased because while I think varsity definitely has its merits, being in the MIAA has its merits. Um, quite frankly, I've talked to a lot of other states, and a lot of other states have weighed that option and have come away saying, you know what, I think I like club better. It's just I just have more from a coaching standpoint. I have a little more flexibility. I have a little more control over what my schedule. Yeah, would I love to get paid? I'd love to get paid. I'd love to have support from the school. That would be awesome. But you know, all of these rules that I now have to follow, like I'm a basketball team or a football team. It's he's got to kind of weigh the pros and cons of it. So
That's one of the interesting wrinkles over here. Obviously, you can tell I'm not from around here, as they say. But growing up, I played, all the way from middle school through high school. In fact, equivalent of elementary school, rugby, and club at the same time.
yeah,
And there was never any question. In fact, you were encouraged by your school to play for clubs, and clubs were interested that you play for your schools because you picked up more by getting more coaching and different people. Now we didn't train anywhere near as hard as the kids do here for MIAA. I mean, we certainly weren't doing 2-3 sessions a week. But it was more likely we did 1 or 2 sessions a week and then played a couple of games. But it's fascinating to me the difference between the two systems. The whole idea that you're playing for the school prohibits you playing for a club is quite alien for me.
yeah. Well, and the coach as well. I mean that so when your varsity season is over as a high school coach, you are not allowed to talk to your players during the
Yeah,
off season.
that's strange because my first middle school coach was my English teacher. So he coached the rugby for kids. That always was actually our English teacher. And then as we moved on, the club I played for actually was the head of one of the schools we played against was the head of that club. And so not only were we not only did we continue to talk to our coaches, we actually talked to the other coaches as well throughout the seasons on and off. So yeah, it was very much more open. But again, rugby in those days was a totally amateur sport, and no one got paid. No
it's
one
a
was allowed to get paid.
it's a
Mm.
strange rule. I think the idea behind it, just to play devil's advocate, is just that the idea that a coach will kind of pressure a kid into essentially training off season in whatever sport they're into next, right? So for example, if you have a football coach that is the whatever the rest whatever the wrestling coach, they would pressure the kid into essentially turning that wrestling into a training format for football or something. I don't know. Um, it's strange though. There are a lot of strange rules, and MIAA is it's I say it's great here because it retains the athletes. It's looked we it's a very structured format, but it's not the only way to to grow the sport. Just by just by having the Free Jacks in New England, just that visibility and the way they've reached out to the youth and stuff like that is I'm sure more clubs would be forming in Rhode Island or if they're not, if it doesn't make it easier to move them to the MIAA, it's just, there's going to be growth around success. And we're lucky here in Massachusetts because we do have the MIAA, and it works for our needs generally. And hopefully it just spreads more and more, and we kind of, it's good. It's just, it was such a heartbreak this season with the Free Jacks. So we're right on the cusp. It was such excitement, such excitement of the rugby
man.
community here. It was
Yeah.
just insane. You could feel it. And that trickles down. You have that excitement. The kids see it, right? Maybe the adults in the community aren't aware of that. They're not connected to that. The national teams. They don't know what's going on with national teams.
Yeah.
So
Well, and it also hurts at the MIAA level. I mean, we've probably had. I mean, think how many kids were going to try rugby for the very first time in the MIAA. I mean, we now have to hope we can recapture those kids next year.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so you played locally, and you double dipped into rugby, Kyle. I'd love to hear that, because when I played rugby, I absolutely fell in love with it. I couldn't get enough of it. I played in high school, and getting to figure out that you could sneak in and get some sevens in the summer with some of the college sides and sneak into some of their practices was amazing. So high school ended. You were already double dipping. You're kind of already knowing, and you played for 4 years too. You found it in freshman year. That's pretty awesome. So then you went ahead and you made your decisions about going to college. So let me ask you, um, you made it to college. Did you how much of a decision was rugby in your college experience? Where you were going, or were you looking forward to it? What made you continue playing in college? And when you got there, what was your experience walking onto the field and already having cleats, mouth guard, and already knowing how to catch and how to pass backwards?
Um, yeah, so probably around my junior year of high school, um, I was like, all right, this is what I probably want to do in college. I don't want to really play football, do really much anything else. Um, and like you said, like I'm going in the summer, I'm going to all these tournaments and I'm seeing all these college teams play and seeing how much they enjoy it. So I'm like, yeah, like this is definitely something I want for at least my college experience. Um, and actually, so I actually got contacted by St. Bonaventure, um, maybe in the fall of my senior year.
They reached out to
Um,
you?
yep. So I didn't really know anything about the school at all. Um, Little tiny school in Western New York, maybe 2,000 kids. And I was like, yeah, right, I'm not going there. I was pretty much flat out said that to myself, like, there's no way I'm ending up here. But then they actually ended up offering me a scholarship, um, a rugby alumni based scholarship. Um,
What? Seriously, dude? That's phenomenal.
yeah. Um, so it's they have some alumni scholarship there that was named after a guy that passed away in 9/11 that played on the team earlier or in the 90s. And his best friend runs the foundation. He's the head of recruiting there. His name's Bill Kelly, and yeah, he actually hounded me almost every week for probably 4 or 5 months, like just telling me he's like, hey, so you're gonna come, you're gonna come, you're gonna come. And then pretty much at that point, I narrowed my options down to either Iona or Bonaventure. And I already had a couple friends at Iona. And I kind of wanted to make my own path, so I decided to go there. And yeah, when I got there freshman year, it was definitely, I mean, I was a little intimidated at first, I guess. I mean, I'm playing guys that went to Xavier, and not to mention the factor of me being 18, and there's some guys on the team that are 22, 21. Yeah, definitely. But yeah, it was definitely interesting. And I think the first game I played was against Penn State. That's when I really knew that. Yeah, I had a
That
long
was
way to
your
go in
welcome to the
my
NFL
rugby
moment.
career.
Yeah. So yeah, that's true. So
Wow.
St. Bonnie's plays all these like major schools, right? You're playing against like Navy and Iona, and this is really high level of college rugby that you're playing in, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So they play in the Rugby East. They play. So actually, the four out of four out of five games are probably against teams that are in the top 10 in the country. And then all the out of conference games like Navy, Iona. So yeah, by the end of it, you're probably playing 7 or 8 teams that are in the top 20 out of how many games. I don't know how many games they played this year, but
Kyle,
maybe.
was Bruce Mateen the coach while you were there?
Well, yeah, Bruce is the coach at Iona. Yeah,
Yeah, Bruce, good friend of mine, good guy.
he's a good guy. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it definitely helped a lot too. So my freshman year, we had a lot of good talent. Like my age class they recruited 30 guys that were all pretty committed to
Wow.
it. And then we got Coach Tui to come in, at the end of my freshman year. And he kind of just like took the program and went a whole like 720 and just brought I think he brought the standard up 2 or 3 more levels. And in his mind, like for me, it was so frustrating, like putting in all that work sophomore year, and like we're still getting killed by all those teams. And then same thing again junior year, but then senior year, like it paid off because just the process of getting there, getting all those kids to come to our school, like things like that, just made a big difference.
Nice.
Oh yeah, I can imagine
That's good.
Wow.
like fulfilling that.
And that's just so
Sometimes losing
impressive.
helps.
Go Shaggy, go Shaggy.
I said sometimes losing helps. If if you're if you're if you're at the top, the whole time, then you don't actually get the grit you need to exceed that level. So
Right, success is
probably
a
worked out for
terrible
the best,
teacher.
really. Yeah, well, sometimes.
That's incredible because it's not a giant school. I was looking it up and I was trying to get a feel for it because I knew you were coming on, and I think as you mentioned, it's not a big school. It's not Boston University. It's not UMass Amherst. It's not Penn State. It's a pretty small school, right?
Yeah, you could
Wow.
probably. I think we do these runs around school. We do a run around the whole campus. On the outside of it, it's probably only 3 miles around the whole campus on the perimeter. So very tiny campus in general. Um, yeah, I think they had a lot of success in the 90s and 2000s with rugby. Maybe like playing rugby, not like affiliated with the school and stuff. But then Clarence Picard, he like is an alumni. He kind of brought in the reins, kind of straightened out the program, and then they made the jump to D1 the year before I got there. Yeah, and then he coached me my freshman year, and then he kind of passed it on to Tui, and Tui kind of took it away.
Wow.
Outstanding.
That's what's that, Chris?
Outstanding.
Yeah, absolutely. That is really 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 neat. So I guess if the question earlier was what made you stay with rugby, not just year to year, but what made you transition from high school and then continue in college? Well, I think the answer is pretty blatant, um, but that somebody was calling you. You mentioned once a week, asking you to go to that school to continue to play rugby. Now, if that wasn't there, would you have played rugby? Would you have pursued some of the other sports? Would you have done any
Um,
sport whatsoever?
yeah, I definitely was always in my mind to play rugby. I just didn't really know where. And honestly, I probably would have went to a different school. Um, but to me personally, it was just like try to go play like I'm a competitor. Like I just want to go play the best I can. And like I like looked it up, researched like some of the schools. And yeah, I found Bonaventure. I looked into Iona a lot. Looked into Fairfield a little bit too.
Yep.
But yeah, like I said, I just wanted to make my own journey.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
kind of went. I went on a visit. Between my senior year and my freshman year, I went on a visit to Bonaventure. Kind of sat down with my dad. My dad's like, "Hey, listen, like these guys, they're gonna be good. Like the rebuild. You're gonna be there for the rebuild, but maybe in 10, 15 years, they're gonna be really, really good, and you're gonna be like the front runner for that. So how good does that feel? I mean, it's paying off right now. So
Kyle, this is Ryan Trost with the Rentham Barbarians, and you made it sound like earlier, like when Clarence was getting 2E, and you guys were really starting to do more recruiting. You were involved in that too. Is that what you're saying?
yeah, I mean, they get the interested clientele. I would say, right, like the interested prospective students. And then like we as rugby players would kind of show them around this campus if they came on a visit. Would reach out to them weekly, maybe bi-weekly. So like Coach Tui like has a like on the team. He has different roles for each group of people. Like I know like we have like a leadership group. We have a community service group. And then they also have a recruiting group. So like they have individuals reach out to players on the team about coming to Bonaventure.
That's really cool.
That's
Man, I can
like
talk
an
about this.
organization, right?
Yeah, that's
Mhm.
amazing.
Yeah. So how much of that was Tui and how much of that was Clarence? Because I know Clarence really got the thing off the ground, like you had mentioned, right? And then he brought in Tui. And I think when I was looking at you guys a lot, when I was covering you guys, there was talk about like how Tui like took it to another level. But it sounds like you had ownership too. You talked about that organization bit. How much of that was Clarence's recruiting? Did he let you know that you guys were going to be a part of all that recruiting and all that stuff?
Not really, but I mean Clarence did get all the kids in my year. He got us all there, which is like a huge thing. I mean, by the end of probably my sophomore year, like my class, we already knew like that my class was going to be the guys that go out. We're gonna like these are the guys that are gonna win us some of the games. And Clarence got us all there. I think Tui Tui knew how to win at that level and how to bring the standard up another level so we could get to that point of winning. I would say. I know one of his biggest things isn't about winning at all. It's just about making everybody a better rugby player, understanding why we're doing certain things, and like being just a all around better human being. And I think that's like one of the biggest things that Coach Tui really harps on is just trying to be an all around better person.
And as a player, had you heard that from other coaches before? Is that something that like really like kind of cemented your love of the club and the game?
Um, I mean, yeah, but I think at Bonaventure, I kind of figured out like how serious a rugby can be. It's not all about like going out and having the socials and everything, but that's part of it. But it's also about all right, we like the fundamentals of rugby. This is how we do it. This is why we play this way. Like this is why we do this pattern. All right, now this is how you pass properly. This is how you scrum properly. This is how you ruck, like the proper mechanics, stuff like that. That like I did learn in high school already previously, but he like finer points that like probably weren't talked about in high school as much. Like maybe my rifle on my pass, things like that. Maybe why we set up a pod shape in the forwards a certain way, like structural things like that that I probably didn't get a lot of in high school, but then I got there and realized a lot of that stuff you needed to play rugby.
Mhm.
Well, I think the answer of how a player stays from high school to college, because I did play with some people that played in high school, and they were mega athletes, and they didn't play in college. I never understood it. They were much, much, much stronger, faster than I was. Um, they didn't play in college. I was very surprised. And then from college, you graduate from college, you go get your first job, and I had a lot of fun with friends in college. I played rugby. My rugby experience was significantly different than yours, Kyle. I went to a very small school, about the same size. We were not competitive in any way. I walked on with my cleats, and half the team lost it that I already knew how to even pass. I even knew what the word rugby meant. So completely, completely different experience. And then, made a friendship with these guys, played rugby with them, had a great time, and graduated college. And a bunch of them went to go have their first jobs. They didn't want a black eye for the interviews. They didn't want a black eye for their sales meetings or whatever it was. And they just dropped out of rugby. They had a great time in college, and all the great times they had in college, and those other things, they just stayed in the rearview mirror. So if we can talk more about college, but I want to start hearing more about what what made you transition? What allowed you to keep going with rugby between college and then senior side? And where did you go first into senior side, and how did you end up playing with the Free Jacks?
All right, yeah. So just to touch back on the part where you're saying like not playing just from the high school to college standpoint, I just think there's not enough exposure. I think in the MLR, I think helps out with a huge part of that because now there's something that kids can sort of look forward to. If like after college, like there could be a potential to play rugby, like professional rugby after college. I think that's a huge thing. But yeah, so I actually started playing for the Free Jacks so I didn't graduate college yet, and I started playing for the Free Jacks in the early spring in the Care Cup. And I was actually still at school taking classes. And then I graduated, went back and played in the Lansdowne game. And then I actually went to New Zealand for 3 months and played with the club there. And then came back. Um, came back and started playing for Mystic. Um, really wasn't like I'm still young. I'm only 22. And I didn't really realize how much learning I guess I needed. Like I realized I was doing well in college. I was getting picked for all American camps, and I was like, all right, I'm holding my own. Like I think this is a possibility that I can go and play at the next level in the MLR. But I think I didn't really understand how young I really was, and like I'm not really like my body wasn't really physical enough ready for it. Maybe not mentally prepared enough for it. So like I definitely had a lot more learning. Um, playing with Mystic definitely helped a lot. Like with the playing against bigger dudes. Like in college, I was probably one of the bigger guys. Now, like I'm still a big guy in the field, but not as there's still bigger guys on the field, like me. Um, but yeah, I think that transition really helped out a lot. Playing Mystic, playing that out, playing with actually grown men definitely helped my transition to the Free Jacks in January.
You know what's so encouraging about that, Kyle, is like that's what MLR is for, right? It's like, look,
Yep.
you're at the top of your game at the college level, and you're a really good player. But how are we going to get to compete internationally against other international sides? And you realize that you got to kick it up a notch when you got to college, and you got to kick it up a notch when you get to MLR, and you're playing with the likes of well, Tony Papura and Kenny Hatakeyama, right? It's like it's a whole new level, and that's what MLR is for, right? That's why we're so excited about it.
Yeah, totally. I mean, you're doing all right in college, like with your fundamentals, like scrummaging and everything, and then you go up against someone like Kenya, and you're like, what? You have to learn a bunch more technique, learn different little tricks that you can do, things like that, and that really helps you out a lot.
So help me understand this, because you told me you were, you're still in college, and then you're playing with the Free Jacks. So see, to me that's like amazing. That's super cool. I mean, it's not just an achievement, and that's wonderful. To me, it's amazing that to you it just seems like just a natural thing that just happened, because I bet there's a lot of people out there that are thinking, how in the world does somebody stick it out and make it to the Free Jacks? So I mean, what connected you? What made you even think go for the Free Jacks? Was there like, were the tryouts and you just said, hey, let's go ahead and do this? Did somebody say, hey, you're good enough to go for the tryouts? What made you go from college to the next step?
All right, yeah. So my at the end of my senior year, we played Iona at Fairfield,
Okay.
and actually Coach Josh and Kareem saw me play. They actually reached out to Coach Tui, and they're like, "Hey, we want Kyle to come to practices in the winter break." So I did that for the first month, right before I went back for my second semester. And then they called me. We stayed in touch. Pretty much had a conversation of how we wanted to like this process is going to take a while, but we want to start building the team with local guys. We want to build like rugby in New England, and it starts with people like you, local guys that want to play and play professionally. And then probably in February, so late February, because I was on my spring break, they gave me a call and they're like, "Hey, we actually have some injuries. We're getting ready for the Care Cup. Can you come in on your spring break, practice with us for the week, and then you'll be on a basis of if we need you to come play. If not, you can just stay at school." So I did that for the Care Cup, and then once I came home, once I graduated, I practiced with them for about 3 or 4 more weeks. And then we played in the Lansdowne game, and they're actually the ones that got me out to New Zealand. And yeah, that's pretty much how it happened.
That's such great timing. I mean,
Oh, absolutely.
step in. I mean, the way the Free Jacks started with the Cara Cup, just playing those Irish teams. It was just
Phenomenal.
it was so great in the area.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
we got
During St.
thrust right in the
Patrick's
middle of
Day.
it. Yeah, it was amazing.
Oh, it was so much fun going there and watching the games. Shaggy, as you said, it was such great timing. It was fantastic.
Absolutely.
Kyle, did you get a chance
Good
to
start for
watch some of those games?
Not yet.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I've watched like a couple. I watched the rewatched the Connacht game and the Leinster game. And I was there for the Ulster game, so I got to watch it in person. The atmosphere was awesome.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. So
we were running an initiative where the flag rugby we're supposed to be opening up for the Munster game. We almost got on the main pitch
Yeah.
before you guys, but they nixed at the last minute because they'll never ever let me on that pitch ever. So that's actually the reason why. That's actually it's because of me.
Nice. Way to
But
go.
yeah, it was such a from a flag rugby perspective to bring the local like flag rugby into that was just phenomenal. And just the Free Jacks in general have been phenomenal. It's just so
It's great. That's a good
couldn't be
experience.
happier.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was really hopeful for when they asked the flag event to take place there at the same time, and now we're hearing, that the Free Jacks might be looking to set up an academy. So I think we're going to transition to that a little bit later, but just giving a little bit of a foreshadowing, seeing that transition. So, Kyle, from your perspective, man, you're, and not to take anything away, and actually, actually to give you probably all the props in the world, I think I was looking to see what were the types of things that allow a player to move from one stage to the next stage to the next stage without falling off the radar because a lot of players do. And guys, I mean, help me out here. Obviously, the best way to be able to keep a kid moving forward through the different stages is to recruit them. And recruiting doesn't necessarily mean, here, I'm going to give you X, Y, and Z, but just reach out, and make sure that kid knows that you're there, so you could that they can move forward to the next stage. Kyle, how'd you connect with Mystics? I mean, if you were already in school playing with school, if you're already practicing with the Free Jacks, how does the Mystics come into how do they come into the play into the picture?
All right, yeah. So I think they just come in the picture because they're the only D1 program in in New England. I mean, if you like I said before, like I'm a competitor. I want to play at the best level I can play at. So yeah, I think that was a easy option just to go there, play against Old Blue, Nyack, Life,
Yeah.
play against teams like that. Yeah, just to keep in shape, pretty much. And they're sort of like the feeder for the Free Jacks. So we had a lot of guys that were playing on the first side for Mystic that were trying to get bumped up to the Free Jacks and get looks to go play for the Free Jacks or practice with the Free Jacks for that coming up season.
Yeah, I'm. Pardon me if I derail the conversation, but just if we go back further, all the way back, because I like what you were saying there, Daniel, that we got to go out and recruit. But it sounds like originally you were recruited into rugby sort of the same way, Kyle, right? Like, how was it that you're with your football friends or you're with your hockey friends and you decide to go play rugby? Because that's the sort of transition that we've seen be successful in Massachusetts. We talked about in other podcasts. Like, what was it about, what was it that drew the kids to rugby? What kind of kids joined rugby? What did you think when you transitioned? I guess we already covered that a little bit. So
All right.
go ahead.
Yeah. So for me, I think obviously being American, there's a lot of other sports options out there. So rugby's kind of put on the back burner. So like you need someone that the real reason why I started playing rugby is because there was a ton of kids at my school that were amazing athletes and they were also playing rugby. So I just wanted to try it out. Like Billy Stewart, he plays for NOLA. He actually went to Hendricken and he was a senior when I was a freshman. He was playing rugby there. We had guys like Mike Scarcella. He played at Iona. He was a collegiate All-American. He's a year above me. He really was pushing to get guys to come play rugby. Yeah, we had a lot of wrestling guys that just wanted to do something in the off season. Things like that. That's what got us to be. I guess what got kids interested too. I mean, after I left, maybe it wasn't as there was a little bit of a drop off, maybe, of kids that were getting. I really don't know why, but I guess it just happens. But I think, yeah, once someone that is like part of the school that is like has a lot of trust with a lot of kids, and he's playing rugby, then I think a lot of kids start to join because they see that he's having so much fun. Or why is he doing this? How is he getting better from doing this?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, good point. I got my question.
I got a question. So your college team, did they have a? So I spent a lot of my time doing girls rugby, youth rugby, or either girls or women's rugby. Does Hendrickson have a girls side?
We're an all guys Catholic high school.
See, these are just dumb questions that I didn't even know. Okay, so it's an all boys.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay, so it's an all boys. Do they now? How is and again, I don't know anything about Rhode Island. I grew up in Denver. How is the? And you probably don't know, but is there much of a girls rugby scene in for high school, and then how was it in college?
I don't think there was really much. I mean, like when we would play like Belmont and things like that, there'd be girls on the guys' team. But there wasn't really like girls' teams set up yet.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how it is now. The only really clubs I know about in Rhode Island that are for like men's side are Providence and Newport. So,
And then in college?
college, yeah. So actually, Clarence, once he stepped down from the men's team, he actually took over the women's team, and he's actually doing an awesome job with the team. So yeah.
Yeah, because a lot of times I find I mean, you think it's hard to convince other guys to play rugby. To convince girls to play rugby, that's an even bigger sell.
So I coached collegiate women. I coached at Brandeis University, and I helped at some other clubs. And at that point, when I was coaching men's college and in women's college, women, the fastest sector of the rugby spectrum was collegiate women. It was growing just leaps and bounds. It was growing very, very, very fast. But the one thing that they were seeing, in and not so much so in men's, but it's still visible in men's, is Division One, very competitive senior side women were super excited that more and more young ladies, women, were playing rugby in college. Then they would graduate college, and thousands of young ladies would disappear out of the rugby spectrum, never to play rugby again, never to be found again, never to be interested in rugby. And that was a real loss, because some of these very competitive teams. I'm from the Boston area, from New England, so Beantown, Boston women, they're looking to see these young ladies that in some ways they've helped coach out of Radcliffe University, the Harvard Club, Brown University, a lot of these local strong programs. And these people, these women, graduate and disappear. They don't go directly into the ranks, continuing to strengthen the D1 clubs, or continuing to strengthen, just senior club play in general. So that's why I was very interested in hearing how Kyle made the transition all the way from high school. And Shaggy, actually, I loved your question, or is it Chris maybe? What originally, Kyle, got you into rugby? That's a very interesting question, because we talked about this in the past, and we talked about, I mean, we don't have a really great word for it, but we talked about normalizing the sport. If it's a fringe sport that nobody knows anything about, it's going to be really hard to be able to attract people to play it. It's almost like we have to just go out there, do things just to make people aware of rugby, so rugby is not such a bizarre, this weird animal that's not football, it's not soccer, it's not basketball, it's not hockey. Um, yeah, I totally get it. And Kyle, I mean, it sounds like your friends were doing rugby, so you just joined with them. Is that right? Oh, no, that's later on. Did you answer that? How did you get hooked on rugby? What was the first thing that got you hooked on rugby in high school?
Um, I don't know really. Maybe just probably playing. So like our first practice that we had at Hendricken was a scrimmage. I mean, and they just threw me out there and just see what would happen. Um, and like I don't know any of the rules, anything like that, and I just still enjoyed it.
But
And it was just something. It was
how
just something to do in the off season to keep in shape, I would say. Like that's why I really started my freshman year.
Okay, because something brought you to the sideline with cleats, right? You weren't just walking down the street, or maybe you were. Were you walking down the street? You saw a rugby game. You said, "Dude, that's for me. I'm jumping in. Guys, get out of the way. I'm going in." Or
Well,
like,
like we would have like announcements. Oh, this is also a big thing too that I forgot actually. We actually do a tour every year at Hendricken too, and so when they first start the season, they also make that a big point. Like, hey, we're going to this certain place. So my freshman year, we went to Montreal. So like we had a whole meeting about going to Montreal.
yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
like playing a team there. So like I was just like, all right, why not? And that's something to keep me in shape for. and a bunch of other people are doing it, so why don't I do it?
I swear the clubs in Montreal and the clubs down in New Orleans are probably the most booked clubs in the nation,
Oh,
right?
all time.
Those
Yeah,
are just
100%.
those are just everybody goes onto it. Who cares if you actually play or like who are we playing and who cares? We're in Montreal, we're at Mardi Gras, we got to wake up on Saturday to be able to play a game. I swear those two are probably the most visited by every, Division 2, Division 3 college in the nation. That's really funny. I love it.
My
And
college
you know
went to
what? This is a
Winnipeg.
this is a really good point for club play. The MIAA, it's hard to see those tours happen. With the club
Oh,
sport,
Yeah.
is more
that's
likely.
right. Yeah, because
You
Ian.
lose a lot. You lose a lot when you're not club. Like with the Marshfield, they had to do away with the graduate game
Tours.
versus the current players. Yeah,
Yeah,
tours. Yeah, so
that's a
so
good
that's one thing.
point.
It's better structure, but sometimes less fun too.
Yeah.
And I'm eager for the high school, a high school episode or a high school show to explore that because I totally didn't even think about that when I played at Brooklyn High School. We didn't have tours overseas, Montreal being overseas. But we did go down to New York City. We went to New York City to play down there. We went to Randall's Island. And to a bunch of high school kids where we're getting in our own cars and we're driving ourselves over there. um, it was it was mind blowing. It was utterly amazing. And our coach Ian Ryrie set us up with host families. So we drove ourselves down there. We showed up at at the front door of the school. We got paired up with our hosts, and we went out and just hung out and had fun all weekend long, and played a couple games to boot. So that was, you're right. That goes away. That can't be had.
Mhm.
Wow, that's
No.
that's that's very interesting. Daryl, I think
Yeah.
I cut you off.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to ask a question. So, with you being able to look back on it now, and your first introduction was in high school. How do you think it would have been your first rugby experience would have been at an even younger age, like say elementary or middle school, just playing at the local park? How I mean, were you still trying to fill yourself out from all the other sports? So you had to play a little bit of baseball, a little hockey, a little lacrosse, and just want to try all the big mainstream sports. And then did it take you to get the college or high school for you to say, all right, I've tried them all, so let me try this, try something different.
I mean, yeah, I was always active as a kid. Like I played football, hockey, baseball. I mean, I was always at the park playing basketball with my but I mean, looking back on it, honestly, if there was probably rugby provided at a local level near me, I would probably try it out. I mean, the biggest thing is just a person like me, like I can run the ball in football. I was never allowed to run the ball in football, so like to be able to run the ball is probably the best thing in my whole entire life.
Absolutely.
To even touch the ball, to be honest with you, like that's just
I was a chunky kid, and when I played football, the coach never let me touch the ball.
like, exactly, and that's what I
Yeah.
mean. Like so many American kids that would only be playing offensive line, defensive football, would 100% try out rugby just so that one thing they can run the football or run the ball.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. You know.
That's a great thing to stress to recruits who don't know anything about it. You say they recognize football and they're like it's the glory of football, but everyone's playing everything. Everyone's able everyone needs to fill everyone else's role rather than be over specialized. So it's a game of adaptation, which is it really does. It's great for kids when they have especially when they're with the more popular sports, they're not you have people that over specialize and like you, Kyle, they see the running back or they see the receiver to get in the glory, and it's like, no matter how good you are, you still want that. Everyone wants that. Everyone wants that glory at least once. So it's a good sell for our sport, just because that's blatantly lacking from a lot of the other ones.
But I actually thought about a few points why there is a drop off between college and senior sides. And what I really came up with, just like in New England in general, I mean, there's only one actual college side. Mystic has the only college side that like kids can go play at. So that's why I think that's why they have such a big number of players, because all those college kids just go on that one college tour, and then now they're playing for Mystic for their 4 years that they want to go on that tour, and then just go play there because they played there for the past 4 years. And then I think the biggest thing though is that like a lot of people realize that they need a job, so they have to go wherever the job is offered. So they obviously go somewhere else. And then another thing is if they're from the area, because I know a lot of our colleges are pretty prestigious and a lot of people from all over the country and the world come to them. So I don't know how many of them actually stay and then want to pursue rugby after that.
Yeah, that seems to be a big
Good
issue,
points.
especially. I mean, like you said in Boston, that we have. I mean, it's awesome that we have so many universities around here, and so many of them that have rugby clubs. It's awesome. But I mean, you make a really good point that when they graduate, they may not be staying here in town. They're going wherever the job is. And then the other point you made is, when when you get that first job, you might not want to, continue playing rugby because you don't want to go to work with a black eye. Um, one thing that
Yeah.
was one thing that was really interesting when my wife and I were living in Ireland was that they had a flag rugby league, and it was really aimed at the mid 25 to 35, maybe even 40. And what it reminded me of essentially was a company bowling league or a company softball league. This league was filled with guys and gals who had probably played rugby in high school and college, but they were now professionals. They were working in IT, or they were working for big name companies, or they were aspiring doctors and lawyers. But they were like, you know what? I can't go to work with a black eye. I can't go to work with a broken knuckle or whatever, scratches. But on Wednesday night, they would show up at one of the rugby clubs hosted it, and the IRFU fully funded it, put money into it. And you'd show up at the pitch. You basically get a tent, and it'd be your office until all the teams had on, Pepsi or AT&T or my wife worked for Pearson Education, and I think it was seventh, because I think you could have five guys and you had to have two girls on the pitch at all times or three girls on the pitch at all times. And then it's adult rugby. They had kegs of beer on the sidelines, and for the most part it was singles. With people in their mid 30s, 40s. And they would just go out, and it was this flag rugby had the flags that were with the Velcro on the shorts. And it was adult rugby, and people would socialize afterwards. And like I said, and I went with my wife a couple of times, and it just reminded me so much of like a company softball team or the bowling league. That these people who had probably played in high school or college or and as adults or wanted to play as adults, but they were like, this is so much better for me because I still get the rugby experience. I can still get to play. And if you want to play high level rugby, you definitely could because there's clubs out there. Maybe that got the juices flowing again. But it was a nice alternative for those young professionals that were just starting out.
Yeah, I mean, this is shown here from the Wolfhounds. I mean, I worked in London for a broking firm, and I would go in on a Monday morning with a black eye, wearing a suit, and the looks I would get in the elevator or in the back office, like I know he's Irish, but did he get into a fight over the weekend or what?
Hmm.
You know, but they were the comments that would come out. So I think once you leave college and you want to play rugby, you have to really want to play it. You got to be dedicated to it. And as Kyle says, it does help if you have friends that have gone to college with you and have moved to a team, or you've played with those guys at a junior level and you moved up along, or you've toured with them. You know those guys. There's, the camaraderie there is definitely something that allures you to go on and play after college. But not everybody has that, and also, you get tied up in life, and suddenly you've got a girlfriend, or you've got something else going on, and you've got other avenues you want to explore, and unfortunately, rugby takes a back seat. And the other thing is, you can sustain an injury, and if you get a serious enough injury, if you get an injury that you're out maybe a year, you think, God, is it worth it? I'm not getting paid for this. I have to pay to travel. I have to train 2 nights a week. I got to spend all day Saturday playing. Is this something I'm really committed to do? And is this something I want to do? So deep down, you have to have a passion for the sport. And to follow that passion, it takes a lot of dedication, you know? So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I agree, Sean, about the dedication when you just think about the workouts and the training and the travel and the cost associated with it for sure. But I don't, maybe we're guys that are still here talking about rugby during COVID-19, so maybe we have that passion. But it never took anything more than the slightest twist of the arm to get me to play, even if it's on the
Ever so
weekend.
slight.
I showed up at a field this past fall, and they were like, hey, here's some boots, you're out there. But you know what the counter to that is, which is still really encouraging. I don't know if y'all are on mailing lists for some of your clubs, but when somebody maybe lost their down on the luck lost their job during COVID-19, they send out a notice to the mailing group, and somebody says, send me your resume, we'll get you hooked up with a job. Or maybe Sean, you pick up some folks, like just the rugby network. While it can take away some things, I remember having a broken finger and saying, no, that's my typing finger, I need that one. Right. But on the other hand, it can take it away, but it can also give back too, right? So I see that, and it's really uplifting to see somebody say like, hey, does
Hey,
anybody have any
Chris,
work? Like,
I
yeah, we
actually
do.
got it. I got into trouble this year because I hired your number 10 and your
Oh,
coach
yeah.
to work for me
Yeah,
all summer. So the Wolfhounds were not happy with me, but I said, hey, guys, it's rugby. The guys need jobs. You know, okay, they are the South Shore number 10, the coach, but hey, I got to help them out, so, you
yeah.
know.
Those are two special characters too, right?
Well,
Yeah,
it was fun because we could talk rugby all day while we're up ladder. So, hey, I like that.
yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. So actually, I have a question, Kyle. You mentioned something that I didn't think I didn't realize. So I played for Boston, so I know the Boston system well. The Mystic. I know Burgers coached Mystic. I know some players that played Mystic. I know Mystic as a team, but I don't know it inside out. Now, did you say that Mystic has its own? What would that be? An under a college side, right? You said they have their own college side.
Yeah, so they actually do a college tour to Montreal in June, I think, for a weekend.
So do
Are,
they?
are these active college players, or are they college aged players?
Right. How does
No,
this work?
they're active college players. A lot of guys from actually Boston area. Um, and yeah, they just go to the tour. And then pretty much after the tour ends, they pretty much get asked to stay and play for the rest of for the rest of the summer before they go back to school.
So these are college players that play for their own colleges, of which they are a student of. So they're already
Yeah,
playing college at their own college, kind of like you. But then look at these smart guys. What they've done is that now they're just organizing a tour in their. Now, do they recruit? Is there a tryout, or is it just show up?
I think there's definitely tryouts, and then after the tryouts, you get selected.
So it's select side. This is select play, guys, but this is with a twist. This is like who can party the
with the
best
club.
and play well. What, Daryl?
It's like a lot of times your select side is a like a union would put that together, or an SRO would put that together. But this is
anybody can come and try out for it, though. That's where.
And
Yeah.
Daryl,
Well,
I'm gonna leverage what you said earlier. You said anyone, right? Because the one thing that I've been throwing around quietly over and over in a lot of episodes is there's nothing stopping youth from setting up its own select side right now with half the teams on one side, half the teams on the other side. Like we could just organize right now. We could decide, hey guys, right now we're going to set up select side, and these teams are going to be able to designate 5 kids, and these other teams from East Massachusetts, West Massachusetts, North, South. However, we can just decide to create our own select side. So nothing's stopping it. It's just, do people show up for it? In Mystic, Kylie, what you're saying is Mystic just got themselves into a really, they came up with a great angle. They're providing a well organized, well set up select side tour overseas, and then from there, I mean, they've already done their select. They've gone on tour. They know that you are fun to hang out with, responsible enough to not get arrested by the very courteous mounted police, and a huge shout out, unfortunately, to that Mountie who passed away this past week. But that, I've never heard of this. This is really, really, really cool. So for a second there, I thought you meant they had their own. What would that be? Under 20? It wouldn't be under 21. Well, I guess they could call it an under 21. I thought they had their own.
It'd probably be more of an under 23 type of
33.
side.
Yeah, exactly. So for a minute there, I thought that Mystic was making a transition into an academy type system. And we
it
don't.
sounds like more of a recruiting plan,
Right. It just sounds like a really
scheme.
great, but maybe that's just a skip and a hop away from being an academy. Because folks, how many academies do we have in the Northeast? And now I'm actually sort of trying to transition. If we have any other questions for Kyle as far as his, his journey through rugby, let's go ahead and just unload on Kyle right now, because I think the next thing that we really need to talk about, and Kyle, this is tying in, I think, to your point, but I sort of misunderstood it. That is, and continuing with what keeps somebody in rugby. Well, an academy would keep you in rugby because you join that academy and it's your club, but it's actually everything K1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You go all the way through high school, college, senior side, and maybe if it's the Mystics, they also have a side door into the Free Jacks, through the virtue of the fact that they can provide and produce good players. So do we have anything else for Kyle? And before we transition into sort of like this concept of academies, and how many do we have up here in the Northeast? Anybody?
No, I'm good.
All right, so let's go ahead and transition into that, because Kyle, like I'll be honest, you've had you've been you've worked very hard. I don't want to take anything away from you, but also you've had people helping you, and I think that's what we need to take out of this, right? Kyle wasn't lost in the woods. Kyle didn't have to fight, didn't have to be lost and not knowing what to do. He had the benefit of people coming to him and showing him that there is rugby moving forward, right, Kyle? So you had more of a, oh, that sounds great. Which options do I want to take? As opposed to, like, I went through rugby. I had no idea it existed in college. I literally had no idea it existed in college. And then while I was in college, I found Beantown Women, and that's how I found out there was senior side rugby, which was kind of cool. So Kyle, you kind of had people go to you and show you that there's more rugby that you can look forward to. That makes sense, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I also think that, like, me as an individual, like, also had, like, shot myself out there a little bit, maybe, like, send my game film to someone or a coach, maybe go to a camp that the college or the men's side is running. That's like a good option to get notice is to go to their camp. And a lot of schools do run high school camps that then they can then recruit out from there.
Yeah.
Because you never know, that one kid that wants to try rugby comes to your college camp and is just an absolute stud athlete. So like you always just should have it, you know. But yeah, I think those like doing those little things helps put a player out there and gets them exposed to people, and then that's how they get more involved. I would say.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, guys, I mean, it makes sense, right? I mean, this was a fantastic story, but I think it was just a lot of good established programs doing all the right things to pull Kyle into their system, right? Do you guys see it any other way?
Oh,
No,
that
I
makes
think it's
sense.
totally.
It seems like those mechanisms in order, even for even the information of where to those camps to go to and where to send the films. Those that falls on us as administrators. To set
Yep.
up those things as well. So
Never even thought about doing that, and particularly now since, and I'm not. Again, this is a topic we're probably going to talk about at some point, and maybe the high school, show will talk about this or whatever. Um, the concept that there's now interest in rugby players in helping them get to college. I'm not going to say recruiting. I'm just going to say that there's mechanisms, Shaggy. I like what you said. There's mechanisms in place to help the Kyles of the world move forward in actually helping them through the college process. Um, you know, because they are rugby players, and that's something that just blows my mind, because from my experience, and I'm sure other people older than I probably had it even worse. If you're a rugby player, boy, you were not doing it for the glory, right? No,
Or for the money.
no,
yeah, no, you were not
Well,
doing it for the money.
well, it's funny when Ty Leader came over and started playing for the Wolfhounds, and he had left the Connacht Academy. He had very little college experience, and he said to me, anyway, I can go to college over here. And I said, well, I do know a few people, and one of those was Dan Payne at Life University. So I called Dan. I said, hey, I got a Irish guy here. He's young. He was in the Connacht Academy. He's looking to go to college. What can you do? And Dan said, let me talk to him. So he did, and Dan was about to offer him a scholarship till Lindenwood stepped in and said, we'll give you a full ride, come and play for us. And that's how Tig actually got into Lindenwood.
Wow.
Wow. I mean, that is just such an interesting angle to talk to. And Kyle, I mean, thank you for opening up this can of worm for us. I think that'll be a really interesting thing to now go after other people. Maybe Ty go after him, and be like, hey, what was that like? What did it take? What did it feel to be out in the wilderness, and what did it feel like to have somebody say, yeah, come play, and we'll make college easier for you. All right, so should we? Do you guys want to transition to the sort of the academy? Because I mean, and now I'm making a leap of faith here. And Kyle, again, you're a co-host, you're a guest, you're hanging out here. You do not speak for anybody except you. You're not speaking for the Free Jacks, but we heard that the Free Jacks are starting this concept of an academy that really they're not a lot in the United States. Does anybody know of any other academies out there?
Yeah, I'm pretty educated on this stuff, Daniel.
Yeah,
I
let
don't
us
know
know,
if you.
please. Give us a background on it, and then we'll jump into Free Jacks.
Well, so I'll say there's basically like two types of academies across the United States. One is the eight or so sevens, sort of like somehow funded or associated with the Olympic Development Program, right? And then our local program that's like this is Northeast Academy, run by Rich Chadwick. Maybe and John McGeekey was a part of this for quite some time too. I think we've talked about on other podcasts.
Hmm.
So that's the one like major one that's here. But keep in mind that's for sevens, right? If you're not a sevens player, and like and not a lot of us are, and it's really for this like age 18 to 23 bracket mostly. mostly is what's going on there. But our local one for that is Northeast Academy. There's one in the Southeast. There's one in the Texas area. There's one in Utah, and a few on the West Coast as well. We don't need to get into it. Then there's these other academies that like maybe are a little bit more like for profit in some cases that do cater and do have some connections to youth, right? Maybe they do have a U14 team. They certainly have U16, U18 teams, and those are sort of, at least it's to some extent, like they're intending to run some sort of business, but they are trying to increase, make rugby better in the United States. Most notably in the Northeast, there is Atlantis. That's probably the biggest other academy in the Northeast. What's that? Oh, yeah, and they also only do sevens rugby as well. Probably another big one that's sort of nationwide, where you see some kids in our area playing for it, is EIRA, EIRA, Eagle Impact Rugby Academy. They actually recruit from all over, and they do have from our area. I think maybe they had a camp in Arizona this winter, and there was about five wolfhounds there, and maybe some other kids from the other programs available. But again, you have to go to Arizona, right? And it's $700 and a trip to Arizona over Christmas vacation in order for you to play rugby at the next level. And here's a great program, and and they generate a lot of people for the Eagles. But again, it's a lot of money, and and it's a lot of travel in order to make it happen. And then there's other programs as well. I've mentioned in a couple of podcasts before the Rhinos Academy. I'm sure we're going to talk about them some other one. Rhinos is a lot like ERA, except for they really have a good girls program as well. Not just the boys who are growing up, but they like really have a good girls program. There are also other academies as well, but those ones are the actual ones that are actively recruiting from the Northeast, and generating teams that are going on, playing on these tournaments across the country, and maybe traveling to Canada and trying to coordinate and branch out to places like Ireland. So I'll suffice it at there. But then, so what I just described is like you either have to go to California or Arizona, or be 18 to 23 men's sevens player, or actually men or women sevens player. And now we're talking about the Free Jacks Academy, which is more than what we're talking about here. It's local. And from what I've seen so far, it is also inviting kids that are younger. So it's a chance for kids who are a little bit younger to have a chance to play rugby and get trained at a much higher level than we have before. So I'm going to pause there and see if you have any questions, or if anybody wants to elaborate that knows more than I do about what the Free Jacks are trying to do with their academy.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So the way that, and Sean, correct me if I screw this up. So the way that I saw the academies exist in Ireland was and this is kind of what I think the Free Jacks are doing, is the model was the IRFU didn't really run academies. The professional rugby teams did, and it was a little easier because you only had 4 provinces, so you had 4 professional teams. The IRFU would fund and support those different professional clubs in those provinces. But like, say, I lived in the Ulster branch, and the Ulster branch ran an academy. Munster would run an academy. Connacht would run an academy, and then they would send their select players, the ones that they picked, the ones that they thought were best, and maybe the IRA, if you might come and take a look. But then they would send their kids to probably send them to Dublin to do academy warm-ups for maybe the Six Nations or under 20s.
Yeah, all those academy players would have been under contract
Yes.
by their province, so they would have selected those players by watching them play, from high school to college to club level.
Mm-hmm.
And even at high school, they would actually approach them and say, hey, we've got academy, we've got a position for you. You continue to go through college or whatever, but we want you to join our academy, and you'll train so many days a week, and so on and so forth. So
yeah. So
and
my guess
I would imagine the Free Jacks would like to do something.
Correct. Well, and I think that is really also what USA Rugby probably wants to do too, because they can't really. It's really too much for them to be able to handle running academies and trying to send their select coaches all over the place. We're a big country, so they would really probably rather have these. I think I forwarded an article to Dan about USA Soccer. I think USA Soccer is looking at doing this as well because for them to run a USA Soccer academy was probably too much, too big, and so really what they're leaning now, maybe the MLS actually running their academy program, and USA Soccer might send them some money, some funding, some direction, but they, really they would rather have like these professional soccer clubs run the academy, run the youth academies, and then tip them off to kids that they think have got something. So this could
Yeah,
be this could be the trend that kind of goes forward.
I mean, the only problem with MLS right now is, I mean, if you take the first team that played, the first team that New England Free Jacks put out against in Las Vegas, I think 12 of the 15 on the field were foreigners. So that really doesn't help USA Rugby at looking at developing their own players to go on and play for the Eagles. So I'd imagine,
Yeah.
yes, if the Free Jacks start an academy, then they are going to pull local players within the New
Yes.
England area who would be eligible. And that's where you probably see the interest from USA Rugby at their
Yeah.
academy level as opposed to the players that are on the field for the Free Jacks at the MLS level. Because, 12 out of 15, that means there's only 3 players. And I could probably, mention, I mean, I know one of them was Danny Collins. I don't know who the other 2 were. But,
Maybe Kyle.
maybe Kyle, So
I
I
think,
don't,
Sean, that's the key thing, though, isn't it? If the MLR is really going to make it happen in this country, it's got to bring through the American talent. It can't rely on, foreigners who are reaching the twilight of their career.
No, absolutely.
What we're seeing a
But
lot
I
of
mean,
going on at the moment, unfortunately.
yeah, but I mean,
Uh,
the other thing is they're bringing in the talent, so it does raise rugby as a sport within the U.S. But then those Americans who do get to play with those players on the field, it should raise their game. Mind
Yeah.
you, if you've only got 2 or 3, it's not enough. You need, I mean, when I ran the Super League, you were allowed to have a maximum of 5 on a roster of 23. So it meant that the other 10 players on the field had to be all American. You know what I mean? So
It's just a balance, isn't it? Because I mean, obviously there's some amazing talent arriving on the American shores at the moment. People like Dan Carter are coming over and stuff like that, and undeniably one of the greatest fly halves that the game has ever known. But there's an American fly half who's sitting on the bench.
Yeah.
I would
mean,
say,
I
just
I definitely see the
it
pros.
makes sense for the Free Jacks. It makes sense for the Free Jacks to just stay as local as possible. I mean, because it engages the community, and what rugby in the USA is lacking, MLR and just in general, is just the fans. We need fans. We need to engage the community from the top down. We can't, if we don't have any local heroes, if we have local heroes and we have a pathway forward that's more attainable, that's going to engage more people, that's going to get more people in the stands for the Free Jacks, create more of a local pathway forward for our local communities, and in the long run increase the quality of rugby in general. It's just a better plan forward rather than bringing in talent. We need to develop talent in this country. We have the people. We need to engage the athletes that are here.
Yeah, I said it earlier. Sorry, Daniel, but I said it earlier. But somebody said it well. It's sort of a balancing act. We got to start somewhere. But as it stands right now, I think in MLR you have to have 5 national, U.S. national qualified players. Even though a lot of them have been born in Ireland, Tyke being one of them, and then there's other ones. You have to have 5 national qualified. But Kyle, maybe you should chime in here. But you're getting better playing with Kenny and Simon and Tony, and Tony, and Brighouse. I don't know if if you played with him or not. But like there are a lot of front rowers that are national level, right? That are internationally capped or a U20 internationally capped. That you're going to get a lot better at rugby playing with them than you were going to if you were playing, at a club level a couple of years ago, and that's really exciting. And so it's a start, and I agree that we probably have to grow the game that way.
Yeah. So I understand both sides of the story. Um, like right now in MLR, you can have 10 foreigners on the field at one time. And I'm pretty sure you can have 2 on the bench, so you can have 12 out of the 23 on your roster in the that are foreign players. Um, but yeah, like I get it. Like that doesn't help the American game right away. And it doesn't help the mass majority of people. But yeah, like someone in my situation or someone that's like on the cusp of being there from like right out of college, someone that maybe needs a little bit more developing. Like yeah, that's the perfect opportunity. Now he's going to learn under someone that like has been playing rugby since they're 5 and knows all the mechanics and technicalities and things like that. And that's where we get better players, I guess. Because then once those Americans figure out, all right, this is what I need to do, this is how we get there, then they can go and teach the academy or whatever the local guys how to do things the right way.
I think this is the interesting balance. And I am playing devil's advocate here, so I don't totally disagree with mixing and bringing new talent in. I think, but you just look at France. I mean, the top 14 is an incredibly competitive club level competition, but it's littered with non-French players. And then the French national side, up until the last 12 months, have really struggled for the last 10 years to get their acts together. And that's really as the top 14 has come to the fore of being a really high quality league. And the only way the French seem to have turned it around now is to have abandoned those players who play in the top 14 or have played regularly in the top 14, the French players, and go after the kids who've been playing with other French players significantly more consistently, and they are better for it. And so there is a balance. I don't disagree, Kyle, that playing around great people, your game goes up. But that's true for everybody, whatever thing you do, be it sport or any other part of life. But as I say, when the danger of having too many foreign players and making that the sport, so that it's just about the sport being played and not about growing the whole nation, I think is always a challenge. And for me, as a foreigner living over here, watching my own home where we have a lot of foreigners playing in our national league, it hurts. It ultimately hurts.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I can totally see it, and that's one of the things that makes this Free Jacks Academy so exciting. The
Yep.
Junior Jacks, I actually like that branding. It's
Yep.
like that's the next generation. We're sort of doing what you were describing, Alan, that France is doing, right? And their under 20s are unbelievable now, back-to-back champions. They they are developing players really, really well. And let's hope that we can be saying the same thing in 5, 10, 15 years, that that's the way we're heading, and the Junior Jacks is a good way to do it. And just want to reiterate what I said earlier. It's local, right? You don't have to travel across the country to get high level training. And it's for kids. It's for kids that some of the camps and clinics that they're talking about running. I know we got COVID-19 sort of derailing the program a bit, but they're talking about having kids that are my kids' age, the youth rugby age,
Yep.
12 and 13 years old. They're going to be able to get this level of training, and that's really, really encouraging and exciting for us.
And that's what's really exciting to me as it pertains to this particular show is that I doubt that there's going to be a lot of, under 18, 16, 14s, 13s, all the way down to kindergarten that are, you know, that are imported, foreign talent to be in their academy. I get it at the highest level. It's going to be controversial, but that's way up over there. If we're talking about youth rugby, um, the fact that they're putting an academy together is amazing because they're not going to be poaching little kids from overseas to come play over here. They're going to be That's where they're really going to be able to impact the local scene in local rugby. It's going to, as we said earlier, it's going to hit so many different aspects of it. It's going to start normalizing rugby. People are going to look over and be like, "Oh my goodness, look what's going on over there." It's going to make it approachable. It's going to make it exciting. It's going to make it, common. People are going to be trying to do it. Also, you better believe that it's going to be select side. So even as we in our own teams make it as approachable to everybody in the ethos of the kindergarten, first, second, third, fourth, even fifth, sixth is fun, 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 fun. We're here to provide the sport, but moreover, we need to ensure that we are keeping this fun as opposed to drill, 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 drill. So that's what we're doing, but they're going to be able to provide, I can assume, they're going to be able to provide a higher level of play where maybe we promote to them the play. We recommend our players that we feel are a good fit, and then they go ahead and they take over from there. So now they're going to be able to start covering the whole question of select side and bringing up play from its very roots, from its very grassroots. And Kyle, do you know how young this is going? Because I mean, if for some reason they feel that they can only do under 18 or 16 or 14, I'm not sure where they're putting the cap on it, or where they're saying, this is as deep down as we can go. There's a lot of coaches on this podcast alone, never mind around, that I'm sure would be more than willing to participate and help out, and it would take nothing to be able to provide the players and be able to provide the coaches if Free Jacks decided to go as young as fifth and sixth, third and fourth. Kindergarten, first and second might be a little bit too much of a stretch, but I'll throw it out there. Kyle, do you know how young they're looking to go?
I do not know, but I would assume, basing on numbers, they would, like, I would assume if they have that certain amount of number in that age group, they would definitely do it.
Oh, we
You get what
just
I'm saying?
yeah, we just saw guys. In during winter, they and maybe Sean, maybe you can speak more to this. The Wolfhounds put on winter clinics, and those things just keep going up in numbers. And it's not just high school side, it's not just junior side, not just junior high school, all the way to kindergarten. They seem to be getting more and more players each winter. Sean, does that track with you?
Yes, yes. This is probably the third season, maybe fourth season they've done it. And I believe this year we probably had over 120 kids attend, and you have children from as young as 5 up to high school age kids, and it's from all the clubs in the area, are invited, and also all the coaches within those clubs are invited to come and help out and participate. And it's just a way. Now, I know in the past it's been over maybe 8 to 10 weeks, but this year they only did 5 weeks just because it is quite expensive to rent Union Point, and you need at least half the bubble in there for 2 hours, which I think runs to about $1,000 for a Sunday. So that is expensive.
Wow.
But the Wolfens do fund that, and then they hope to recoup it by just charging each child $10 or whatever to come in and participate.
Yeah,
And,
Kyle.
Yeah.
it, and it's a great clinic too. That
It,
is awesome.
it is. So, Kyle, if the Free Jacks are listening or whatever, and they're looking to take it even deeper, and not, I think we were talking at Daryl. I think you and I were sharing articles back and forth in the discussion. Maybe we could talk about this some other time. The discussion about putting a lot of research into a particular strata, a particular layer in rugby, whether it's going to be elite or it's going to be development or whatever it is, versus a concept where there is great depth, lots and lots of layers in a very sort of finite geographical location. So there's two models. Go very deep in very strategic zones. So you have a great deal of play, everything from kindergarten all the way through, professional play, or are you going to put all your money and all your focus into a particular thing like, elite and international play? I just really like this concept of having a very rich pocket, because then that's going to be able to develop awareness, knowledge, concepts, whatever it is, that can then be shared, and then you can sprout, which then, other programs can build off of that. And I just see that as a perfect example for that. And however deep they're thinking of going, I don't want to say I want to yeah, I would challenge and say, you know what, you have the resources, you have the people in the area to go deeper than you probably are thinking, unless they're already thinking of going all the way down to the 5, 6, and 3 and 4. And then ties into kind of your experience, Kyle. How great would it be if you had joined freshman year into a program that just tracked you all the way straight through until, an option into professional? Now, you managed to do that yourself, but how cool would it be if there was an academy that would help you do that, right?
Yeah, it'd definitely be awesome. And it definitely, I think the academy itself keeps more people interested. Um, it keeps like not, it keeps like the person that's on the fence interested. And now like they have something to do over the summer when high school rugby is done, or like when youth rugby is done. Now they have something that they can constantly be doing. Um, and it keeps you involved in the game. It maybe gives like a youth player a dream almost to be able to go, like I have an option now to go and maybe be able to, like I can dream and work hard and get to a professional level kind of thing. And I think it's a huge part of our game, and I think it'll definitely help New England and Massachusetts rugby a ton at every level of of us growing and getting better and setting a higher standard, I guess.
You make a really good point, Kyle. I don't know if I mentioned, but I'm a PE teacher, and I do a lot of work with Feel Good and going to Boston Parks and Rec centers, trying to get trying to bring rugby to inner city kids. And the one thing that I can tell you about inner city kids, especially here in Boston, is they absolutely love basketball. They can play basketball from the time the rec center opens to the time they close.
Yep.
And every single kid who's playing, and there's a lot of kids playing, they all have hoop dreams. They all want to play for the Celtics. And and you're right. And it's if you the YMCA does a Boston Celtics, I don't want to call it an academy, but it's a Boston Celtics sponsored youth basketball program. And every year, each YMCA can only take like X number of kids, and it sells out every year because kids love the idea of playing for the professional club. Like one day, now most of these kids, like what 1% are going to be able to play professional basketball, right? So most of these kids are never going to play professional basketball, but they all love the, and any program that's tied to the Celtics, they love. So I agree with you. If we could tie a program in that just piques the interest of kids and probably mostly parents, that hey, one day you could play for the Free Jacks. That is, for a kid who's already rugby crazy, that's huge because now they got something to look forward to. You got your local club, you got high school, you got college, but I could play for the pro team one day. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and it's mutually beneficial too. Like, I mean, and the Free Jacks are trying to build a fan base, right? They haven't even had an official home game yet. We missed it by we were so close to our official home game, but we're trying to build a fan base, and one way to build it is to create junior jacks, right? You're gonna automatically get fans, so it's a gift that gives back a little bit, and we've seen other clubs in the MLR are doing that and to some success. In particular, Seattle Seawolves probably the first ones to do it with their academy. But then there's other ones as well. Like I've seen San Diego Legion playing in tournaments on the West Coast, and the Gilgronis, as funny as their name is, they really seem to be focused on youth and building the game and sort of some creating some sort of junior academy. I don't know if they're there yet, but ultimately, like it does seem to be a league wide initiative, and we're really excited about it. I'll answer maybe one of your questions earlier, Daniel. I'm like I'm a little bit embarrassed about how much I know about these rugby academies.
Mhm.
But it is U14 is the lowest that I've seen them go. So so I had a kid who's 12, and now he's 13, but he was 12 at the time that he was interested, and it was on the radar screen. So that's as low as it goes now, but that doesn't mean that they wouldn't offer camps and clinics for kids that are a little bit younger.
And I just
Yeah.
love this concept, and not just so much, Daryl, as you mentioned about the the nebulous, I get to go once a year to the hallowed grounds of the Garden where the Celtics play, and be in a clinic for a week, a weekend, I don't know, but the way that I understood. Some overseas clubs, not even academies. I don't know where the difference between an overseas club and an academy. So help me understand, because this is the way that I fell in love with it. I heard that some clubs overseas, local clubs, have their senior sides. They have their old boys. They have the women's club. They have their juniors. They have their colts. So it's just younger and younger and younger and younger. So the youngest side, and Alan, maybe you know more about this. The youngest side could show up at 9 o'clock, because that's when their kickoff is, and they could stay and watch straight through until 1 o'clock, when the senior side Division One, first 15 takes the field. And so it's not just this nebulous, I'm somehow attached to a very accomplished team. I'm not just somehow tied to a professional team, but I can, like, I see them. I can go to practice. Maybe they're close practices. I don't know, but I share space with them. I share the same, emblem as they do. And in some cases, if you're good enough, and you're of age, your coach might say, keep the cleats on. You might be subbing in, second half for the next team. And that's just an incredible situation to go at 9 o'clock or 10 or whatever, and be able to watch the rest of the club play as the day goes on. To me, that's what I thought, that's what an academy is, but I've started hearing this term academy, academy, academy. So can anybody help me? Is that really how clubs overseas work, and what's the difference between that and an academy?
So what you described there just sounds like a regular weekend at the club.
That's
Yeah, that's a
phenomenal.
club
Kids
rugby.
play in the
Yeah.
morning, and the adults start playing. So I remember my own cult days. We would show up, and every now and again you get a tap on the shoulder from the seconds coach, say, hey, come with us today. And you'd be 17 years old running out with a bunch of sort of 30 plus year old guys. No, not college
Mind
kids, because they were
blown.
at college. They were these were amateur, old guy amateur teams, not
wow.
retiree greyhound types, but but not D1 by any stretch. So you could keep up despite being young. But yeah, that's how all the clubs work. But most of the academy and feeder systems I'm aware of, and maybe Sean, you've got more insight, it's typically a little older when you're going into those. It's not all the way down, but all the way down at that sort of like single digit ages, they're all feeder systems. My nephew back home was playing at 7 or 8 years old for a reasonably decent sized club. I mean, I certainly played against them when I was a kid. They certainly have a full on series of adult teams as well. So he could theoretically play for them from 9 years old to 49 years old.
Yeah, no, an academy would be, you're finished high school, you're about to head to college, you're in college, so it's definitely after 18.
Yeah. So I think, Daniel, what you're describing is that whole feeder system where all the clubs around are all kind of looking towards that central professional team, and they're setting some
Got it.
level of a standard. Go ahead, sorry.
Oh, no. I totally got it. So academy is a pathway to elite, whereas your local club, if they're good enough, then they will have many different sides, and you'll be able to go from very young to very old. Got it. So there's a degree there's a separation there. I get it now. That makes a lot of sense to me.
But even, I mean, back before all the clubs went professional back home, I mean, if your club side happened to be one of the bigger national sides, you'd be in training, and then you'd bump into one of the England team. That would be fairly normal. Relatively speaking.
Soccer's been notorious for this type of, for really, professionalizing the academy program. And so if you were living overseas and you had any designs of your kids playing professional football, you would work really hard to try to get them into an academy, either before they were ready or post them being ready. Lionel Messi is classic for going through this Barcelona academy and was noticed at a very young age.
Yep.
And like you said, the guys have said that so instead of going to college, he might have played academy soccer, or maybe he did both. But someone like a Lionel Messi was identified at a very young age and put into an academy program with the idea that he's going to play professional soccer someplace.
He was slightly exceptional though, so
he was ever slightly. Yeah.
The fact that we on a rugby podcast could be talking about any soccer players is slightly incomprehensible. That we can talk about one and we all know who you're talking about. Yeah, it's Pele, isn't it? Basically, it's that level.
Yeah.
It's a household name. Pick the sport, you know.
But Dan, I want to go back to one more thing that you had mentioned about or actually I think it was Steve about Major League Rugby. The one thing that I look at a lot of times, I look at soccer as a lot of parallels between rugby, and I sometimes see that rugby look like soccer in some weird kind of way. And talk about the MLS and how professional or how many international players are allowed to have. There's one thing I thought that the MLS did really well, and it was kind of cheeky, but it was the concept of bringing in footballers from Europe or wherever at the twilight of their career, right? And these were name brand players that you had heard of, bringing in the Beckhams and the Thierry Henrys and these really high profile players at the twilight of their career. There's talk that they want to get Messi, they want to get Ronaldo at the twilight of their career because they're big names and people know who they are, right? And the only reason why you're bringing them in is to sell tickets. So, and the MLR is not like anybody else. They want to do the exact same thing. So they want to bring in the Dan Carters at the twilight of their career because they want to sell tickets.
Sounds like
it's also
Tampa Bay.
a bonus. Yeah, I mean, it's a bonus that also that your players are going to get to play with that high level of player, so they can kind of see what it looks like. But it's really a money grab. They want to sell tickets because they want, their fans are saying, look, I do want some a place for my homegrown talent to develop and learn to play. I also want to see the best players in the world. And if you can bring somebody even at the twilight of their career, I'll take Wayne Rooney towards the end of his career. I'll take that and watch him play for a couple of seasons.
Dan Carter.
Well, it was funny. So Ma Nonu's over here as well, isn't he? And I don't remember which team he's playing for, but
San Diego.
Thank you. During the game, it was if it was Ma Nonu and there's 14 other people who occasionally appeared on the pitch. The commentators hyper focused on him. And the sad thing about it was that no taking away, the guy's phenomenally talented or was phenomenally talented, but he made some pretty bad mistakes and gave away some pretty bad yardage and scores. Maybe the system wasn't clear in his head or whatever, but it was almost embarrassing to have this All Black, an anchor All Black, not somebody who got one cap, but somebody who was always written on the starting sheet, just appear very average. And I think that's one of the interesting things about rugby is that there is no star. There's no Tom Brady in rugby. You need all the other guys on the field. And I think maybe it's the one thing that makes the sport stand out, for me at least, over most other sports, is that it's about a team. And the best talented individual doesn't necessarily win anything.
They help.
Well, along those lines, look at Bastero in his first game, playing for New York against New England. I mean, he touched the ball, I think maybe once or twice in the first 45 minutes. And the one time he did, he actually nearly knocked it on in his own try zone, and they took him off the field.
I think this is what the path you're following, isn't it, Kyle? Because Bastro started as a centre, and he's gone to number 8, and you're obviously doing exactly the same thing, coming as a centre into the front row. So
Yeah,
I assume
sure.
you drift out to number 8 at some latter point in your career. Maybe you get a bit taller or something.
Well, he's still young, right? It's more of being able to get a little bit
Bastro
more
or
game
Kyle?
knowledge. What's that?
Bastro or Kyle?
Kyle.
So I didn't realize game knowledge meant you played professionally in every single position on the field. I thought it meant you just spent some time, but I guess things have changed since I was young.
That's funny. That's funny. All right, folks. So we've been at this for a little while. We've had Kyle to ourselves for a while. Do we have any more questions for Kyle? Anything else like that? I think we're wrapping it up, right? Let's one more round of stuff, and then we can do the wrap up where we can give shout outs or whatever it is that we want. So anything any more ribbings for Kyle?
I got
Yeah,
it.
I just want to know when he's going to get a haircut.
Oh, come on, Sean,
no
you're
way.
cheeky. Why are you in front of me, Sean? Come on,
No
jeez.
way. Kyle's got the best hair in MLR.
Don't ever.
So you do not
Eagle
cut it.
one, buddy. I'm so sad your
Yeah.
T-shirt is sold out. I can't believe I waited to decide to get one. Oh, I'm such a jerk for not getting one. That's phenomenal. And the commentators, Kyle, the commentators had a field day with it. Was it Rooney? Was it New York that you were playing? Where was that the first game that I
Yeah,
saw
I
you
think
in?
so.
Yeah, you
Yeah, I
came
think so.
in and they mentioned the what is it, the glorious mullet. Oh man, that was phenomenal. Yeah, I just absolutely fell in love with it from that point on. That was
You're
great.
you're my son's hero. He loves the look. Absolutely loves it.
Absolutely. And you know what's funny is right now that what do they call it? The Corona coif, or is it the COVID cut, whatever. Nobody can get their hair cut. Mine is crazy in the front, but really short in the back. So I'm an absolute loser. I've got the mullet completely backwards, literally. It's really really sad. Like I'm a loser in so many ways. I can't even get the mullet right.
Oh man, that's bad.
That's
That's a bad
funny.
look.
So
I said,
I do have a
hair,
question. I have one
doesn't
last
it,
question
Daniel,
for
rather than
Kyle.
slides forward?
Yeah, so I have one last question for Kyle. Dude, how cool was it to be in the Free Jacks or to get that first call up to go over to the big show? Come on, how cool was that?
Yeah, it was awesome. I mean, it was definitely even better just being a local guy and like
Yep.
being from around here and like seeing rugby in New England grow. And finally, like now I can go play in front of my family and friends and all the people that I've been playing with for however long now since high school. And now they're all there watching me. Like it's unbelievable. Like it's unreal feeling.
I, what a dream, man. What a dream. Cheers to that. That's phenomenal.
Oh,
Anybody else?
Thank you. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, buddy. Thanks for keeping the dream alive. That's phenomenal.
Yeah,
Anybody
thank you.
else?
Thank you guys for supporting.
Oh, absolutely, man. I had my seats and everything. We were so psyched. Guys, what we were gonna do for food? What was the plan?
We were going to theme it based on the team that was coming in. So, for San Diego, we'd probably go for something like Mexican, or,
Yeah.
if we're playing Austin, we'd go for Tex-Mex, that sort of thing. And,
Oh,
Oh,
that'd be cool.
mixing it up from that point of
That'd
view.
been cool.
So we were going to theme, and obviously, I was not the person coming up with the themes, as you can hear, because I can't remember what any of them were. But I was definitely going to appreciate it.
exactly. So actually, Kyle, what team pairs well with pot roast? I would guess is that like every team out there?
Yeah, I have no idea. That nickname came from college, and I really don't know how it started, but my freshman year they were just like, "Yep, that's your name," and it just stuck.
Like,
And yeah,
like all great things, college, you can never really trace it back, but it just becomes reality after a while, right? It's just the
yeah,
thing.
yeah,
It's just the way it is.
just the way, yeah. And
And
now
actually, everybody calls you pot roast now.
yeah, everybody,
Oh,
all my college friends, all the college alumni, everybody.
that's phenomenal. Absolutely love it. All right, guys. Anything else for Kyle, or should we start wrapping it up?
Thanks, Kyle. You're my hero.
Thanks, Kyle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually had a great time tonight. It was awesome. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah,
Thanks for
cool.
coming on, buddy. Thanks for coming on. All right, so let's go ahead and wrap it up. So going around, let's do from the bottom up now because Shaggy keeps complaining he always goes last, and now I'm just gonna have to think on the spot. So shout
I can
outs,
do that.
last thoughts, whatever it is, just last things before we wrap it up.
All right, well, shout outs to the New England Free Jacks and the MLR, especially for the Free Jacks to really synergizing with the local rugby. This could have gone a million different ways as they're being introduced into our community, and I think they couldn't have gone about it in any better way than the way that they did with just the introduce with coming into the local clubs, into the local teams, always being available, and really connecting with the teams. So shout out to the Free Jacks. Shout out to you, Kyle. Thank you.
Yeah, just thanks, Daniel, for invite. Always a pleasure to be on the show. Really enjoyed it. And to Kyle for showing up tonight and putting up with us for the last 2 hours to hear our banter and answer our questions. And also, as Shaggy said, shout out to the Free Jacks and very sorry that this has all happened and we couldn't go to that first home game on March the 14th. I was definitely looking forward to it and looking forward to a good season. But anyway, thanks, guys, and have a good night.
Yeah, cool.
Deal, Sean.
Who's next? Is it me?
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh,
Anybody, jump in.
okay. Shout out. So today I did some community service today. I went to a place called Community Servings, and I helped them prepare lunches and dinners that go out to I think it's the elderly and some kids that are on the free and reduced lunch program. So I went and packed up some lunches, and I cut up a bunch of onions, like 2 big barrels of onions, and I put the soups together. So it made me feel really good. 'Cause as a PE teacher, I write one lesson plan at the beginning of the week, and then I'm pretty much done. So it was great to be able to get out and do something.
The last time I did community service, I got into trouble for something. So
Yeah.
Was that before or after, Sean?
Oh, I got into the trouble before, and that's why I was doing the community service after.
Yeah, Daryl's just
That's
not coming
another
clean on that
story.
front yet.
It's okay. It was volunteering. It wasn't community service. It was volunteering. Oh, one last thing.
I'm glad you clarified that. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm looking at CNN, and I'm just seeing that Rob Gronkowski is going to come out of retirement and play
Yep.
for the Tampa Bay
Yeah.
Buccaneers.
Yep.
That
I just
crazy.
read that.
I grew up in Colorado, so I'm a Denver Broncos fan. So I think that is hilarious. So I am not a Patriots fan.
And they'll probably sign Edelman next season, right? And somebody else the season after that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll see.
There's no way Edelman's not going there. No way. No way. But rugby's better. Rugby's better.
Yeah.
That was me. That's it. See you
All
guys.
right. So I think I'm gonna go to next. Unless pot roast, you got a shout out you want to do? Or do you want to save yours for last?
No shouts really. Just want to say thanks for having me on. It was an awesome time, and good luck to everybody and be safe.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, so my shout out is going to go to Rugby 20. I have absolutely no skills in it whatsoever. I cannot figure out kicking. I cannot do scrums for my life. I haven't even tried lineouts really, but I will take on. I'm all comers. I will challenge and take on all challenges. I figured out how to get online and how to be able to play. And Ryan just smeared the floor with me. I think I was barely good practice for him. But if anybody out there wants to get some rugby in, you go find me, and I swear I will be the best speed bump you have ever come across.
Good deal. Oh, you should have been there to help Kyle practice. Kyle played and was one of our representative players in one of those virtual games, right?
I missed that one.
Yeah,
No way.
I was the player in the first game. It was definitely a very challenging game.
Oh, you know what? I did
Um,
see the first one because I was so excited about it. I didn't realize that was that you. Maybe I didn't. Maybe I missed the first one. I got the second one. Sorry, keep going.
um, yeah, I felt a little ripped off though, because Toronto, they changed their guy halfway through the game.
Oh, whoa,
Oh,
brought in fresh legs. That's not fair. Your
fresh
thumbs must have been
legs.
tired.
And I was winning in the first half, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna do fine. And then this guy came in, and I got killed, and I was, oh,
Oh, you
Finishes, even on a video game, you need your finishes.
you need him.
That's what I will do when if I get a chance to play you, Daniel, I'll definitely have my kid nearby who is like if I'm losing in half time, you'll
That's
Yeah,
such
Chris,
such
that's called a
shenanigans.
ringer. That's not the same as a finisher.
Yes.
yeah, right.
Well, as long as it requires, as long as nobody knocks on or goes out of bounds, I'll give you a good game.
Yeah, I know how that goes. I totally can't figure out those set pieces or hardly anything myself. Hey, I didn't go yet for a
Yep,
shout
you're
out. I
up.
can, shocking. I've never done this before, but of course the doctors and nurses and also the grocery store workers and everybody else who is pushing themselves on the front line in service industries. Really appreciating them. Actually, and of course. I'm appreciative of our guest, Kyle, and you, Daniel, for setting this whole thing up. It cannot be easy to run all the background information, meanwhile, sort of moderating and doing a lot of the talking as well. But I got to tell you something that my company, the company that I work for, I'm very critical of them all day long. I'm critical of them on the phone, but I got to say, my company, Boston Scientific, we donated $1.3 million worth of PPE over the past, when
Ooh.
COVID came out. They cut our hours they cut our hours and our pay 20%. So we basically get Fridays off. And what a lot of the folks are doing on Fridays is building face shields for frontline workers. So we're trying to build 3,000 face shields a week while we're down while we have an extra day in our hands. And we work together with the University of Minnesota to come up with this like strange ad hoc ventilator that runs off of something like a windshield wiper motor, and it's super cheap. It looks like it's costing $1,000 instead of $20,000. It's this joint effort with the university, and we should be pumping out ventilators in the next week or so as well. And I'm really proud of my company, and I don't say that very often, and I'll even say it's streaming on video. I'm really happy to be a part of the organization. At least this week, I am.
Nice. Good
Very
stuff.
cool.
Excellent. Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
It
So
takes
I have
innovation in times like these.
three much more mundane shout outs. So the first one is to Charlie Baker for finally putting my kids out of their misery and admitting that they're not going to be going back to school this school year. Something that they'd been pestering me about for some time, and I'd been confirming I didn't think it was going to happen. But so thank you, Mr. Baker, for making that a reality. The second one is shout out to the teachers for getting my kids off their computer games and forced them to do a little bit of schoolwork. And the third one is very personal and very mundane. Last week we forgot to put our trash out, and I saw the garbage collector, the trash collector guy, come driving up our road. And when running out of my house, dragging my trash barrel behind me, and he saw me, and he paused and stopped his truck and waited for me to get to the end of my drive, put the trash there, socially distanced, let me walk away from it, and then came up and picked it up and drove on. And it was just a really small, little personal thing, and just a nice gesture when he could just easily blown past me and we'd have had 2 weeks worth of trash to put out. So
Very
that's my
nice.
big
All
one.
right, that's
You're here.
fantastic.
Good
That's
man.
nice.
And only because Chris did do the right thing and thanked all the people who are still putting themselves at risk. No, I mean also just the doctors, the nurses, the grocery workers, etc., who are making all our lives very, very simple when it could be a lot harder.
Absolutely.
Here.
Absolutely. All right,
Amen.
folks. Excellent show. I really had a great time with everybody. Let's go ahead and just wrap it up there before we dig ourselves into a hole, or I dig ourselves into a hole, and I need help from everybody else to dig me out. So thank you very much. And next week, I think we still can keep the schedule since there's really not a lot more going on. We'll come up with more topics, more great topics, and perhaps some more great guests. Thank you very much, and everybody